Hi, everyone. Good morning. My name is Terrence Fox, Head of Innovation with iAdvise. Thank you for joining us on another beautiful Tuesday. And this is, as I've said before in the past, our Conversation With series, where we interview CX leaders, innovators, and have a conversation on where we've come from and where we believe we're headed. Today, we have a real treat for you. I'm joined by Marie Dubiez of Albatross CX. And Albatross CX is a global customer experience agency with a specialty in creating memorable customer experiences for premium and luxury brands. Marie is the managing director for the Americas and formerly worked for Piaget and Cartier. Even saying those words sounds like luxury. And my point is, she knows luxury. So we're super excited to have her on board for today's session, which is focused on how best-in-breed retailers are watching their customers and obviously helping transform to this new normal, right? We've got an always-on consumer, a consumer that is now purchasing in different ways, has cost concerns more so than ever before with today's new economic climate. So it's a very fragile scenario where obviously luxury still has a role. So Marie, can you hear me? Are you on?
Hello, hi Terrence. Yes, I can hear you.
Hi Marie, nice to have you here. Nice to talk to you again.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's our pleasure. This is a great conversation today. We haven't really tackled luxury in one of these sessions before, so this is super exciting for us. And before we actually get started, I have a few questions I like to ask everyone. And Marie, I'm putting you on the spot maybe, but okay. We'll see. What book have you been reading recently, or have you read recently that you enjoyed? Or the simplest format is, what have you been learning?
Okay, I hate to say this, but it's been a long time since I last read a book from cover to cover, simply because I have kids. Yes. So the best way I found for me to actually keep learning is a podcast, segments. And one thing that I'm really into right now is Brené Brown. I don't know if you know her. She has this Unlocking Us podcast. And she's looking at, the way, human connections are built and the way we are behaving as human beings. And I think that's very helpful for me from a personal standpoint, but a lot of this also fits into the work that we do. So I'm more of a podcast person right now. And I try to do it like once a day, half an hour, go on a walk, and really freshen my mind. That's the way we do it. I do it, yeah.
Yeah, I feel like I have to change that question soon. I do like to ask it because it's always fascinating to see what someone's appreciated or learned or read cover to cover. But I should probably stop just because I can't even get through books anymore. Too busy.
I used to be guilty. I used to feel really guilty. And now I'm like, just deal with it in a different way. Yeah.
Okay, and for podcasts, I'll say that I really like this small podcast called Stuff You Should Know, where they just tackle random topics. And it's been my kind of savior recently, is covering anything from everything to know about porcupines, like little weird topics like that. And I really like the guys, Josh and Chuck. So something to check out, but I will check out Brené Brown because I am very familiar with her.
Okay.
Now, Marie, tell me a little bit about you as a consumer, a memorable experience you may have had. I'd like to ask, what was a striking, either a positive or negative experience in your own history as a consumer?
I think that's part as a consumer and part of my job because, working on CX, I have this terrible bias that everything that I do, even if it's personal, I'm going to scan it through the lens of my job. So, but I went on Lululemon. And they have, set up this great, distance sell consultation platform. And I think they really set the bar super high because it's super well integrated in their website. Everything is seamless from a consumer point of view. And they developed a setup where, there's pre-awareness of the customer's needs. You can choose an advisor who's going to help you. Everything prior to the booking of the experience is super easy and really well designed. So this was super enjoyable from a personal standpoint. This was impressive from a professional standpoint. But I think then I went in the store and then there was a little bit of a letdown. And I think that's something that's also that we have to be mindful of, as consumers are becoming more and more omni-channel, and they're really touching the brands from very different touch points. The more you raise the bar on one side of your experience, the more you're going to have to raise it on all the other aspects of the experience. Otherwise, you have this kind of disconnect, which is kind of weird. But the digital experience was really amazing, and I think it was the best one I've seen so far.
Yeah, so that's interesting because typically, I'll be honest, with our client base, we usually see that a brick and mortar presence is excellent, right? The fitting, the style recommendations, advice is always on point. But then you go digitally and it's like a brochure, right? That same sort of human connection isn't there. So it's neat that you had an opposite interaction with the brand.
I think that comes with a distance sales setup. So with a distance sales setup, you kind of book an appointment and then you have undivided attention, and this has been prepared before. So you're kind of given the VIP treatment. And then you walk in the store and you're like, I want to see those leggings. And they're like, go downstairs. And it's kind of really strange. The disconnect was really striking to me. And I was like, I want to go back online. Like, I'm not sure I want to go back to the store. Yeah,
props to Lululemon. At least their digital presence is very strong, right? That's a good thing. And of course, I pick on consumers every day and talk about them constantly, but we are also consumers. Marie, how have your own buying habits changed during this pandemic in the last several months? Have you seen anything?
I think because we've bought a car about a month ago. We bought it online. And we bought it secondhand from a guy from a platform in Texas. So I think that really tells me that our purchase barriers online have really dropped. The amount of money we are willing to spend online has increased. And I think that was kind of a leap of faith. I know my friends were like, what did you do? How did you buy a car? You didn't even see the car. Yeah. It got delivered to us. And then they had a really good, case management system because it was not perfect. There was a chip on the windshield, and they set it up super well. Like they had us, they had an appointment booked for us. They are replacing the windshield as no cost. And so I thought this was, really the best of both worlds, between the convenience that I just have the car delivered to my door, but I still get this kind of really premium service where if anything doesn't meet my expectations, I don't feel like I'm, yelling in the woods and nobody's going to answer to me. I can still pick up the phone and there's still this human attention. So yeah, that's a learning for us.
So this is super fascinating, Marie, because I'm going to drill into this a little further. And the reason is because my wife and I bought a car in the beginning of March. So right before lockdowns and right before, of course, the pandemic really started to take hold. And naturally, she planned on using this car a lot, but it just has been sitting in the driveway. But in comparison, like you just gave a situation where you feel you're far more comfortable. It's more palatable than ever before to pay a hefty price tag for something that you're seeing just digitally. Whereas in the beginning of March, I think my wife may have made me come to about 7 or 8 dealerships to compare cars, to try out this car, to test drive the car. So it looks like, of course, while we can't compare that we're both the same type of buyer, it is interesting to compare those two scenarios.
It's back to what I told you earlier. I just have kids and I don't have time. Wow. And very often, I think the way people conceive experience, they think about either convenience or either luxury or experience in itself. And I think that one way it's going to evolve is the fact that convenience should actually meet luxury. And that's a little bit what we had here. We had the convenience in the fact that it was a couple of clicks, a couple of phone calls, but sometimes with convenience, it just ends here. You don't have the follow-up, you don't have all those things. And they managed to bridge with a follow-up, a personal connection. And I think that was really good. And that's what it takes, because you need to build the trust for those type of price points,
Right. So before we dive into our topic around luxury and premium goods, let's talk a little bit about the state of where they are today. And of course, the initial impression is, of course, you can imagine there's a real squeeze, right? People are tightening their wallets more so than ever. But I also have recently seen that LVMH and Kering outperformed in Q3. Mm-hmm. They're doing quite well, which kind of shows that there's still an appetite for these luxury goods and it remains strong. What can you say about the state of luxury goods and these premium products today?
I think it's hard to give like a cookie cutter answer. I think it's pretty polarized. I oversee the US, so I look at the US results much in details, and I think LVMH and Kering had amazing growth performance on Q3.
Yep.
Richemont is down, and Hermes was down. And then within the brands themselves, there's a lot of polarization in the results. So I think everything that's around, cosmetics has an easier time because it's also volume luxury. So it's not the same, commitment to purchase. Right. Everything that's around hard luxury tends to be doing well because there's investment value. So I think Cartier has been doing really well because on the second-hand market, there's a resale value. And so people do not feel that when they're going to purchase something of that price, they're going to, lose a lot of money. There's always this possibility to tap into the second-hand market. And then at a market level, it's very polarized as well. So we all know that China has had, beautiful rebounds in the economy. We see that, new stores are opening. In the US, we've seen also brands that have been doing really well, and they were kind of surprised to see that consumption keeping up. And usually the consumption of luxury in the US is really linked to the S&P 500. It's been doing rather well. There was a stimulus package. People didn't have anywhere to go. They didn't have the travels that they had planned before. So you can imagine that all those things have, nurtured kind of a conception of luxury. But I cannot say like everybody's doing well. Right. I cannot say all the countries are doing well. It's very polarized.
Mm. The other fascinating thing I saw, and then I promise we'll get to the topics for today, is McKinsey put out a recent report on the state of fashion, and there is this expectation, they called it a glimmer of hope, that consumers in the luxury segment will return more quickly to paying full price for these quality, timeless goods, because it was the case after the 2008-2009 financial crisis. Mm-hmm. So it looks like, in general, people are upbeat.
Yes, but we also see that people come back, but with heightened expectations. And so, there's been a lot of awareness in the US, especially about everything that's pertaining to, social standards for brands, right. Environmental standards, diversity standards, and all of things. And I think that was even before COVID. There's this new, wave, new consumption patterns where it's not just the brand will sell me. Of course, the brand plays a big part in all of this, but there's also what's behind the brand, and are the values of the brand aligned with my values, and more and more, that's the expression that luxury consumers also vote with their money, right. And they choose the brands that they feel are meeting their standards. All
right, so let's get down to it. Marie, I was thrilled to put on a tie today. My wife looked at me like she hadn't in a long time, most because I haven't dressed up much like this in ages. So let's get right to luxury. And the topic again is, best in breed retailers. How are they transforming for the new normal? So my initial question for you is around, what technologies are available today and that you're seeing implemented today, and how do they empower achievability for these new strategies?
So I just want to give a little word of introduction. As a company, we are focusing on what we call the human component of the customer experience. So that's, how we look at technology. And I think that's important to just set the scene. From this angle, what we see our clients are using and the industry is using is kind of three types of technologies. The first one I would say is about data collection. And how much do you know about your customers? What do they do in the social networks? What did they purchase with you? And that feeds into what I would say an insight bucket of customer data,
Right.
and that can inform how you develop your products. I know, for instance, Estée Lauder Group is very big on technology to help inform their product development strategy.
Right.
There's another type of technology which is about the experience. So you have seen, in-store mirrors with augmented reality. You can try on the products, those type of things. So things that are here to enhance the way customers are interacting with the brand. And then I would say a third type of technology is anything pertaining to connection. Anything that enables a brand to interact with their clients through different outlets than just, the website or the boutique. And you can think of a chat box, you can think of a live stream, you can think of, possibility. Some technologies merge channels. You can connect on a chat, or you can connect on a text, or you can connect on a phone. So anything that supports connection. For us, obviously, it's important to think that you have to define your CX strategy before you choose the technology.
Right.
I think that the CX strategy informs the choice of technology. And for us, obviously, the main strategic, stake for luxury brands now is this element of connection. How do I connect with my employees, and how do I enable them to connect with their customers? Or in other words, a people strategy. You want to be driving your business by enhancing people connection. Any type of technology that enables you to do so for us would be a good bet.
Yeah, so data collection, anything related to experience technology, and then the last thing is focusing on that connection, right? That connection with the consumer. So I can make some pretty obvious, say, inferences on these, but how do you see that these technologies impact an organization's overall customer experience?
So you were referring to McKinsey earlier. They produce a lot of really interesting content, and they released a study not so long ago looking at the state of retail and looking at 2030. So 10 years down the line, and they expect that 52% of retail activities will be automated. It means that if you take the job description of a retail staff today, 52%, half of what they do, they will not have to do it anymore. It will be done by whatever type of technology. And so if you have this in your head, first, it's kind of exciting because it redefines the role of the advisors.
Right.
It brings a lot of I think, a fresh perspective on what do we expect from our frontline teams. And that's exciting because it's been a bit overlooked, I want to say, in the luxury industry, the role of the frontline teams. And so how does that impact, the organization? Well, if you can connect anywhere, if you remove the low added value tasks for your employees, you're going to break silos in your organization. The way most, luxury companies are organized right now is you have retail, marketing, wholesale, e-commerce, all our teams that are working differently. If you use those technology, you can actually really break those silos, and then you will have to redefine, how do I upskill my people? How do I recruit new profiles? How do I reward them? How do I redefine the work of my managers? And so, yes, those technologies, they are really going to impact organizations in the way they are structured and in the way they deliver their customer experience.
Yeah, and you brought up the stat, 52% of retail activity will be in some way automated. I see that simply as there will be more of the right type of connections, right? The stuff that should be automated is going to be automated, which is only good news.
Yeah, we love it. For us, it's just like super exciting. So the part of the study goes like 52% will be automated. What are the skills that we need to invest in? That's actually the so what, which is an interesting so what. And obviously you need to develop interpersonal skills.
Right.
And it's starting to be, in the spotlights, but it hasn't been so well mastered. That's not where main luxury brands have been putting their focus so far. Luxury brands were very product driven. They wanted to tell a lot about themselves because they spend so much time defining, what is the brand DNA and what is the brand savoir-faire, which is all very beautiful.
Right.
But it was kind of missing the who are you as a client, and to be able to understand that it comes from data to a certain extent,
Right.
but those individual connections are really where you can get the most of, the human interaction.
Marie, so in reviewing today's climate and how things have changed so quickly, and we've obviously seen some very impressive means for these companies of adapting quickly on the move. We've seen some get stuck and kind of remain archaic. How are your clients getting a good read on the market and staying ahead?
So I think you can do that. There are two main ways to get the read of the market. The first one is you need to understand what's happening in your own house. And it might sound like I'm stating the obvious, but it's not always the case. So I want to say, start to look what's happening in your own house. What's the pulse of your customer perception? And ways to do this is to listen to your teams, those people that are in the stores, that are answering the phone, that are answering the text, you name it. What do they feel? What do they see? They are capable of providing that type of feedback, provided they are empowered to do so. So that's important. You need to start, nurturing those people so that they understand the importance of, what they can witness and how they can provide this feedback.
Right.
And back to what I was saying about the industry, the fact that it's very volatile, the customer sentiment is very volatile as well. So, as we were in the middle of the pandemic, it went really low, like consumer confidence was really low, but week on week, it was catching up. In the US is a very specific market when it comes to COVID. You have people that are overcautious, and you have people who do not want to wear a mask, so that's a really broad spectrum of customer interactions to cover. So you need to understand what's happening in your boutiques. You need to understand what's happening. What are your customers telling you? That's the one thing. Understand your customer perception. And then I think 2020 was really a year of what we call consumer insights. So that's more market research, more looking outside at the bigger picture.
Right.
And I think, McKinsey did an amazing job in publishing lots of insight. We've run a couple of studies as well, analyzing Chinese customer sentiments and things like that. And I think our clients were more and more eager to have those conversations, to understand, where is this going? But, beyond those pragmatic approaches, I think it's all down to a mindset. It's not so much about, you will not have a crystal ball. Nobody will predict, what's going to happen 6 months down the road. And so it's more about how do you adapt to the climate, and how do you deal with ambiguity? How do you keep agility in the way you implement your actions? And that speaks to, humility. Brands used to have, 1 year plan, and now they're navigating like 2 months down the road. And that's very different in terms of mindset. How do you train your teams to do so? How do you agree to be in a test and learn mode? You have to test and learn, there's no script. And so the read of the market is also a little bit learning by doing. I think that's also important to navigate very uncertain times.
Yeah, so then I won't ask you about predicting what's going to happen 6 months down the road.
No, I can't.
I can't. You brought up a very good point, right? Take an assessment for what's happening in your own house. And frankly, on our side, because our effort is on humanizing the digital experience, oftentimes I will start a conversation with the website up as a live screen to share their own web presence. And you'd be surprised the amount of executives and higher ups who aren't even familiar with how their website operates today in terms of the engagement strategy and the human connection. So I think while it might seem obvious, that's a very good point. Take ownership and audit your kind of your what's happening in your own house, like you said. So we do need to make these plans and strategies for just now 2 months instead of several years oftentimes. What are your best in breed retailers doing to address these short-term necessities?
So I think that's where the crisis has been kind of, ironic, is that there is no such thing as a short-term action that's going to yield results if you didn't have long-term investments in what matters. And
Right.
that's kind of ironic. Is like, if you didn't do the job before, it's going to be super hard to have those short-term actions that you need. And what is the job you had to do? It's about, fostering those people connection. That means if you have worked in the long run, because that's really long-term efforts to empower your teams to connect with people, if you have developed their emotional intelligence, if you have developed their willingness to build personal connections, then they have gathered the right data. Then they have built meaningful connections with their clients. And then when the stores shut down, those people were able to reconnect. Those people were able to keep their business going. Those people were able to tell their clients, okay, you used to come and visit me in the store. It's not feasible anymore. How about I give you a call? How about I talk to you on FaceTime? That's
Right.
something you can only do if you have done the groundwork before.
Right.
And we have seen people who found themselves, they knew what they had to do. They knew they had to reconnect with their clients, but they could not do it in a meaningful way. They could not do it at scale because they had not done the groundwork before.
Right.
Another example I can tell you is, for instance, if you think of the London market in the UK, it's a market that's driven a lot by tourists, Middle Eastern tourists and a lot of Asian tourists. Those people are not traveling anymore. But structurally, brands have not really invested in developing their local market. They know they have to develop their local market. They just don't have the tools to activate things in the short term. It's going to take them a lot of time to collect the data, to build the relationships, to be able to offer things that are meaningful. So short-term necessities, they could be addressed in a meaningful way when the groundwork was done before. And that was a little bit ironic in the crisis. And again, back to the mindset, it's about this culture of innovation and challenging the status quo. And the really best players we see in the luxury industry are the ones that are capable of really looking forward. They know they are doing well in terms of mindset. They know they are successful, they are growing, but they don't mistake their growth for a guarantee that they're going to do well in the future. So they keep thinking, what can I do better? What will it look like tomorrow?
Right.
How can I prepare for what's next? And I think that's super important.
Yeah, and I mean, look how quickly things have changed. So the point is very valid, right? You need to have that sort of foundation in order to make these pivots and to be able to capture these sort of short-term goals and necessities. Marie, you've mentioned a few times that staying focused on the long-term goal of structural transformation for the client interface should be the end game, should be the focus. Why is that?
Because I'm going to start from a very pragmatic angle. The bigger answer to your question is that the way luxury brands are organized today, those silos I was referring to, the huge emphasis that's still on the boutique, means that they are not capable of delivering elevated interactions at scale outside of the retail network. Okay? So, and if I want to be a little bit cynical, it's not even achieved at scale in the retail network. But say, now we know there's this shift to online, and those online interactions are becoming more and more important. And the way companies are structured today, they just cannot deliver elevated experiences at scale. They can do it for their VIPs. They can do it for a small number of people. They cannot do it at scale. They cannot do it at scale because they don't have the data of the clients, because they don't have the right staff, because the teams are not trained. It's not the same thing, to do an interaction in a store where you can touch the products, when you can give a tour of the store, and it's not the same thing to do it online. And so they don't have the right profile and they don't have the right tools. We are back to technology. The lighting is dreadful. You don't hear the sound really well. So they will not be able to sustain this at scale. And that's what at stake here. You want to be able to have those elevated digital experiences as well as elevated in-store experiences, but at scale. and this is not manageable right now. So the transformation is needed.
And of course, then again, automation plays a key role as we're trying to scale. And you mentioned earlier that the Lululemon example, you need to make sure, of course, that it's a seamless experience between the store and online, so it's not as jarring for visitors. Very interesting. So I think we're already at time. Marie, thank you so much for your time today.
My pleasure.
I imagine that you folks are all wearing Gucci face masks and things like that in the luxury world.
Yes.
But it's great to see you, and I'm glad you're doing so well. Fritz, any questions from the audience or anything to address quickly before we go? That's it. Marie, you're off the hook. Again, it was a pleasure. Thank you for joining us, and I look forward to talking to you again soon.
Yes, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely.
Have a good day.
You as well. So thank you all for joining us. Next week, you get a week off from us. So enjoy the Thanksgiving holiday in the States. And of course, the week after that, we have a very interesting conversation, all related to sound, right? And our guest, Olivier, will take us through how sound impacts the brand experience. And we'll dive a bit further into why these sounds can resonate to emotion and things of that nature. But thank you all for joining us. Our next live stream is December 1st. Make sure you join us then at 11 a.m. Eastern, and enjoy your week off.